So today we're joined by Dr. Lisa Kane, DMD, and you're from Dedham, Massachusetts.
I am, yes.
So that's not too far from me. I'm in Acton.
Oh, nice.
Um, Lisa's company is Dental Office Compliance of New England, doc4ne.com. If you're worried about a surprise inspection or complaint from a patient or staff member, they can help you relax. They can bring your office up to the current state and federal regulations. Sign up for your Zoom infection control and OSHA class and or virtual complete office walkthrough. And if you mention Deals for Dentists, you get a free COVID-19 binder, which is a $250 value. And there it is.
There it is.
All right. So, Dental Office Compliance of New England.
Hmm.
Um, so the has COVID now created you to go all virtual, and you're able to offer these services nationwide now?
I am. So I'm obviously the things I do, fit testing and stuff like that, and that's obviously not virtual. But everything else, the office evaluations that I do, to the mock inspections, those are virtual. All the classes are virtual. I found out. I mean, it's great because I found out that I can do everything, pretty much online. So it's really cool.
Okay. Except for obviously the fit testing, that's something you have to do in person.
Yeah, so the fit testing, I've been sticking to New England, day trips, places, but I've been going, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. But but everything else I can do virtually. So like you can take me on your phone and walk me through your office, and I can ask you all the questions that I would have asked you if I was in person.
Now, do you still practice? Is this like a side hustle, or is this your full time
This is
gig
my
now?
full-time deal. Yeah. So I practiced for 20 years and I was getting really bad migraines from leaning over all the time. And I decided that that was it. I was done. And I always wanted to sort of be the organizing, managing, part of the team. So I stopped a few years ago and started doing all compliance stuff. So this is what I do full time.
No more migraines?
No more, well, much less. It's
Yeah.
it's a huge difference. Sorry if I'm taking anybody else out of dentistry. That stay in dentistry, it's good, but not for me.
So uh was it loops? Was it the position your head was in? Was it the focusing on a millimeter of space, or is it all the above?
Yeah, I mean,
Dennis
I'm so
staff.
old that I didn't start with loops, so I never got used to loops. But it was just my neck has always been my weak spot, and the leaning over and my arms up and all the pressure, it just was like a perfect storm for me. And I honestly never put in the effort to get used to loops because it didn't seem like it was good in the beginning. So
Yeah.
had I stuck it out, maybe I would have been all right. But I honestly like this better. If you had offered me though, if you said I could come in and drill a tooth for you, not gonna lie, I probably would want to do that. But I do enjoy. I love organizing. I love following all the rules. I love helping people and making them understand what's going on because there's so much that when I was practicing I didn't know, or even understand that there were regulations. I was so just focused on what I was doing and didn't realize that there was this big picture that existed.
Well, I was just going to say that your focus on your business is focused on compliance and a lot of services that a lot of times are overlooked by dentists. Day to day, we're focused on getting new patients. We're focused on our staff, clinical skills, and the business. We wear so many hats that a lot of times the compliance aspect is overlooked, or licenses can expire, or things can slip through the cracks.
Yeah, no, it's so easy for that to happen. That's why, like, I feel like if I can help people just kind of organize everything, I'm so bad with the environment because I love binders. I mean, if I come into your office, I give you like 10 binders, you know. But if you can have an organizational plan and then you don't let the licenses lapse, or you don't let, someone forgot to have their infection control continuing ed in that cycle, and the other things too. I mean, you're practicing, you potentially have no idea that you need an exposure control plan, and it has to be filled out and it has to be current, and you need logs of everything, and they have to, you're not paying attention to what your staff is doing necessarily also. And it's hard, it's hard to do everything, I think, as a practice owner, or even as an associate or anyone working there. I think it's really hard unless you have really strict organized plans, standard operating procedures. Everything kind of runs like clockwork if you organize it that way. and that's what I like to do.
Now, do you keep track of all this? Do you offer a service where you actually keep track of all of the for up to board on all the requirements, or do you train the office so one or two people of the staff are in charge of all of this?
Yeah, so every office is required to have an infection control coordinator by the CDC. That's a rule. So every office has an infection control coordinator, and I usually work with that person a lot. And so I help them kind of own it themselves and keep track of it. Because I do feel like if you just give it to me and I keep track of it somewhere, in the abyss of my computer, you may not, you don't know what's going on, or this way, if you own it, if you have the information in front of you, if you make sure, because there's all these, you have to have monthly safety meetings and talk about things. How do I know that you're doing that? You guys have to kind of do it and have your fire drill and everyone meet at the tree outside, and that kind of stuff. So I like to give the infection control coordinator, sort of owning it, and I'm always there. You can always call me, you can always email, I answer my phone, and ask me whatever questions you have.
We actually meet at the dumpster.
You meet at the dumpster. That's a
Yeah.
very common spot. The dumpster, I've noticed. It's not. I don't know why I say tree, because I no one meets at a tree. It's always the dumpster. Or one office, my favorite spot was the Dunkin' Donuts across the street. That's where they meet.
We also have a Dunkin' Donuts across the street, so that
Yeah,
could
so you
work
might
out.
want to change your spot because that might be better.
So now, with your program, you also offer CE credits that satisfy the board requirements. Is that for each state?
Yeah, so I have AGD certification, so I can offer an infection control and OSHA class that is, you can double check with your state, but most places accept the AGD credit. And then I have other people that work around here that help me out with CPR and HIPAA and stuff, but those are probably more on-site things. But yeah, my AGD infection control credit goes, nationwide. And the other thing to be aware of is I usually do a 3-hour credit course, because if you have a Danby registered assistant, dental assisting national board, they need 2 hours of infection control and 1 hour of OSHA every single year. And that's not true. I mean, like here in Massachusetts as a dentist, I just need some infection control throughout the 2 years. I need OSHA and infection control sort of updates in my office, but they don't have to be, you know, legit and, CE things. But it's interesting that these DMB assistants, that's why I do the class for 2.5 hours, because they need more than everybody else does.
Now, does it vary? Is there a lot of variance state to state, or are these requirements pretty close nationally?
So there's a lot of variance state to state as far as who takes the CDC and OSHA guidelines as guidelines or as law. So there's a bunch of states that just say, do your best. There's a bunch of states that say, whatever the CDC and OSHA say, their rules. Most states do have an infection control CE requirement as far as in their actual board regulations. And so whenever if I go to, like I went to Maine last week, I mean, I go and I look on, I learn their stuff and I go to the board and see what their stuff is. So it's definitely specific to, if I'm going to your state or doing a class for you, I'm not going to make sure you follow the mass guidelines. I'd make sure you follow whatever guidelines of wherever you are located. So they're basically the same. As far as what you teach in the CDC and OSHA class, that's all the same, because that's always, um, whatever those guidelines are.
So now you also, I'm just looking at your website here. You have HIPAA training, you have CPR, infection control, OSHA, and you can do a lot of this all in one day. And again, this is all through Zoom, except for the CPR. I'm assuming that has to be done in
Yeah.
office.
And the CPR, what she's done is she's done the practical part. She's doing a lot, the knowledge part online, and then the practical part does have to be in person. So that has to be in person.
How do you coordinate that? Do you have someone that can help out? Like if you're helping out an office in Texas, can you coordinate someone locally that can do CPR training for them?
I could definitely look into that. Yeah, I mean, I can help them find someone that's local. I mean, I know some people in other states that do some of the things that I do, and I could find some contacts for you, and I'm sure help you out.
Now, do you find that offices are just all over the board? Some offices are really tight with guidelines. Others are just, like board inspection. The OSHA police are going to show up and lock them up and throw away the key. Are they just all over the board?
Yeah, there's a huge variance. So, I mean, obviously, there's some offices who know about these regulations and know the things you have, and they have a lot of it. Most offices do not. I mean, to be honest, there's a variant of how off the rails they are versus how, close they are. Um, but a lot of offices may have 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, had someone come in or have an ocean book or whatever. But if you look at it, it has people that don't even work there anymore, or, maybe the dumpster's taken away that they're supposed to meet at, and now there's, pop up something there, so they, it definitely is, it definitely varies. And no matter what, the situation is, we can help you and get you back into shape, as long as you're willing to put in, willing to do it.
I'd imagine a really good time for someone to contact you is someone that's opening up a new office, or they're buying or transitioning to a new office, and to have you come in right in the beginning and make sure everything is on the up and up. Do you have a lot of new dentists, new practice owners call you?
Yeah, so that's a really important touch point, I feel like, too, because if you can set yourself up from the beginning, have everything you need, have all, most of the time, if you buy a practice, you're still going to have the staff from before. But, if you can have all your standard operating procedures, have all your plans and protocols, everything's so organized that it's so easy to start from the beginning. And then I've also had it the other way, whereas people want to sell their practice, and they, the better your practice looks and the more organized it is and the more stuff that you have that's in regulations, the more desirable it is to somebody and the more valuable I would imagine that it is. So, and then someone's going to look at it and not be like, oh my gosh, now I have to do all this other stuff, as well as, whatever it is that they have to do.
Now, with post-COVID world, are you expecting there to be more drop-ins by the board, and is there going to be like a new respiratory or COVID guideline that they're going to be focusing on? How is this going to be changing as we move forward here post-COVID?
Yeah, so OSHA and the CDC is changing all the time. So they're changing their regulations, changing what you need. There was just a nursing community in Ohio that was fined thousands of dollars because they had N95s, they didn't have a respiratory protection program with medical clearance forms. I think there's a lot of confusion as far as the whole respiratory protection as to what's required. And it is required 100% that you have an initial fit test, that you have a respiratory protection program that's written, that everyone has had medical clearance. You can't just wear a respirator without having clearance. Like, that's not even a question. Like, that's needed. So if anyone ever came in your office, that's your first ding if you don't have that. But I do know, at least in Massachusetts, that the OSHA violations, the OSHA department, they're getting a lot of calls from dentists. And at least here, which I'm sure is around the world, the climate is, people are scared, that hygienists, the assistants, they're nervous, rightfully so. So I think that they're not shy to call an OSHA department and say, listen, this is what's going on in my office. And if they do that, OSHA has to check it out. They can't just wave it off and, poo-poo it. They have to check it out. And if they check it out, once they come in your office, you might as well, make sure that you have everything, because they're gonna find something if you haven't, kind of dotted your I's and crossed your T's.
I imagine it's like if you're getting audited by the IRS, they're coming and they're going to try to find something. So let's say, we put a lot of emphasis into PPE, and our office looks like a meth lab with all, everything tarped up, and or like a liquor store in New Orleans with the plexiglass up.
Yeah.
I went to school in New Orleans, so.
Okay.
But so our staff, we asked them many times, this is what we have, and we've done the best we can with what we have. If anyone does not feel comfortable, you have to let us know. Everyone feels really comfortable and safe. Our patients feel safe. But like you said, what if there's that one staff member that doesn't, and they haven't spoken up, and they could put a call into OSHA, and then you're going to get, or a patient, and then you're going to get an inspection. and that's when the OSHA police shows up. And what happens if you get if they find something, or do you get fined? Can you get shut down?
Yeah, it depends on the severity of it. So what they usually do is if they get a complaint, they'll send you a letter and they'll say, here are the things that you have to do. You have this amount of days to do it. Show us in writing that you're doing it. If you do it, great. If you're not doing it, we're coming in and we're doing a full inspection. So that's an option. Depending on what it is. I mean, if you're not sport testing and you don't have sport test records, that's a shutdown.
Right.
That is like, you have to do that, and you have to do that whatever your state requires. In Massachusetts, it's weekly. Other states, it's different, mostly weekly. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's scary because I think that's great that you're asking your staff and making sure that they're feeling comfortable. And I would imagine that, because you're asking that and you sound like you're asking it honestly, that they, are going to answer you honestly, and that they would, tell you if they felt like there's something that needed to be changed. But yeah, it's scary because once they do come in, like an audit, you said, I mean, they're going to find something most likely, and they're not going to be happy about coming.
Now, can you explain the fit testing a little bit more? So let's just say there's an office. We have a lot of N95s, but let's just say you're an office that couldn't get your hands on any N95s. Obviously, you can't fit test without the N95.
Right.
With the N95s, are you required to fit test? Is it different state by state? Can you go into that a bit?
Yeah, so OSHA is in charge of employees, right? So all they care about is your employees and that your employees are safe. So it's OSHA that requires fit tests. They require an initial fit test. What they've currently done is waive the annual fit test. So if by a year from now, say you get your fit test today, if by a year from now the supply is higher and it's regular, then they'll go back to the annual. What they've also altered is that normally if you get one size today and then next week you decide you want to switch to a different size, you'd have to get a new fit test. Right now they're saying if you find a comparable mass, so for example, the 3M 1860, those blue ones, are comparable to the 3M 8210s. So if you happen to have both of those, you know that they both fit around the same. You don't have to be refit tested in it. But it's really hard if you can't find N95s. And here in Massachusetts, it's one of the states that requires whatever the CDC and OSHA says. That's the rule. And what the CDC and OSHA both say right now, CDC just changed, is that in any aerosol procedure, even on a well patient in an area, the CDC changed it to an area that's of moderate spread, an N95 is required to do an aerosol procedure. So if you don't have N95s and you're following OSHA and the CDC, you're really not supposed to be doing an aerosol procedure, which is kind of scary because we all know that everybody out there is kind of going full steam ahead, doing what they're doing. So you just have to be really careful and, try to find N95s and try to find real ones, and then get all your documentation.
So the face shield with the class 3 is no longer good enough with aerosol producing procedures.
So it's always been since March 14th, I think OSHA made this regulation that said that any aerosol procedure, well patient, anyone, N95 or greater. The CDC was kind of iffy until they just did this, moderate transmission area, which I'm unclear. It's very unclear as to what, those levels are. I feel like any area that you're having any transmission, to me, play it safe. Wear the respirator. So the CDC is now also saying that an N95 or higher for any aerosol procedures.
So what if you have just one size? All you get your hands on is one size of N95s.
Yeah.
Why would I? What is the fit test going to show me? If those are not fitting correctly, that's all I have. It's not like I can just go to,
Right.
To Target and get more N95s of different sizes. So.
I mean, you're not going to want to hear my answer. I mean, it's going to be, again, I'm trying to follow the rules. I mean, you're supposed to, according to the CDC and OSHA both, you're supposed to be limiting any aerosol procedures and saving the N95s for those people that it fits and that, they're doing the aerosol procedures. So you're really not supposed to be doing anything that could potentially be exposing your staff with an N95 that doesn't fit. And sticking something on top of it doesn't make it so it fits. And even like people always put like a KN95 or double their surgical mask, but like those things, first of all, they don't have the same filtration as the N95, but they also have the same leakage point. So it's always leaking up here and down there. And like doubling up 10 things that have the same leakage points isn't really doing anything. So.
And beard's not good, right? Shave the beard.
No, but my favorite infographic from the CDC is it has a whole picture, is it probably like 20 at least facial hair things, and it shows you what facial hair you can have. Like it talks about like you can't have a Fu Manchu and you can't have like a handlebar mustache, but you can have other. It's very fun to look at. It shows you all the different kinds of facial hair that you can have. So as long as your facial hair, huh?
I'm gonna have to check that out immediately.
Check it out. It's always in all my slides because I think it's so funny. As long as your facial hair is within the shape of the mask, you're usually pretty good. But anything fancy that's going to poke out or stick out or really long beards, not good.
So you've listed some things here on your website that you help out with offices. You have some examples of an exposure control plan, SDS book, log book, employee training book, infection control protocol, medical emergency protocol, standard operating procedures. I mean, these are all things that I imagine get overlooked or just offices don't have time for. What is the SDS book and exposure control plan? What can you go into what those are?
Yeah. So the SDS book are the safety data sheets. So they used to be called material safety data sheets, MSDS. A couple years ago, I don't have one here to show you, but a couple years ago they changed them. And so it used to be like this diamond thing and had lead numbers in it. And now they have a diamond thing that has this picture that I don't even understand. It's, there'll be a flame or like this heart thing. But they're GHS symbols. So they totally change the symbols. So most offices have you have to have some sort of every single chemical that you have in your office, you have to have an SDS for. So the best way to do it is to put them all in a binder, and you need a list of it. The OSHA says you can have these digitally, but they have to be at every computer and able to be accessed without, a password or anything like that. And they also have to be available if there's a power outage. So to me, that makes no sense. I just like to have the book. The idea of it is that, say I get whatever in my eye and I have to go to the emergency room, I'm going to grab that SDS. I'm going to bring it with me, to the emergency room so they know exactly what I got in my eye. Can they rinse it out? Do they have to remove my eyeball? Like, what do they have to do? The other thing, the exposure control plan, that's basically your OSHA book. So that is like the book in your office. That is all your information about infection control protocols, hazards, PPE needs. It has sort of anything you'd want to know about safety-wise in your office. It also has, emergency protocols. It got so big that that's why we do a separate now emergency binder, because it got, with all the stuff in there, we took out the emergencies and made its own little section. But there's the exposure control plan is basically what you would, it's in a bigger version of what you'd buy from like the ADA or something. But the difference is the ones you buy, you have to actually fill out and make them personalized. So I know that a lot of people, that do what I do, come in, and if they do a class for you, or they just automatically give you a book with what they're doing, whatever kind of class or training. But I don't do that because everything has to be personalized. So if you want me to do any books for you, I really gather a lot of information and spend a lot of time on it and make it so that it's totally tailored to your office versus some, completely generic thing.
And I imagine if a owner has multiple locations, then and they could be in very different areas, do you customize for each office of a multi-location practice?
Yes, and I do offer, a deal for that too. I mean, I usually do, my main price for the main office or one office, and then, kind of cut it down for the other offices, because I do have a bunch of offices that, have more than one. Some of it's the same, the COVID binder is similar, some items are the same, but a lot of things that are not, like the, where are you meeting for the emergencies, but also the infection control coordinator is not going to be the same. You're probably not going to keep everything, all your emergency drugs in the same place and that kind of stuff. So, um, they're all super customized, but and they definitely are, to each office, not just sort of generic, like, Eric's offices, they're
Hmm.
specific.
So do you feel like that they're going to be ramping up these unannounced drop-ins, even if you haven't gotten a complaint by a staff member or a patient, that they're just going to be dropping in to see if you're up with regulations?
I don't know. I think that they'd probably like to. I don't know if they have enough power to people power right now to do that. I think that they're, from the last time I talked to the OSHA person, I think they're so overloaded with the people complaining, and the people that are concerned about this, a patient or, as you said, staff member. I think that they're focusing on that. I mean, as far as the board, a really easy thing for them to check on, like you said initially, are licenses, are CE classes. So they definitely, they can do that offsite and check that, and then they can call you and, try to come in or do something because of that. So that's why it's really important, to make sure everyone's current with their licenses, because it's really easy to pay for your license, but if you haven't had the actual classes that you need, it's like you don't have a license.
I imagine that those 2 years go by quickly, and you could easily forget about renewing your license or your staff's license. What happens in that case if you're either you or your staff has an expired license, or can you get put on suspension, or do you have to do you get fined? Is it case by case?
Yeah, it depends case by case and state by state. I mean, a lot of times they have you make up extra classes or do like an ethics class or due diligence, something, it depends. I mean, I would say that as soon as, if you realize that, I would call the board and, kind of just lay it out there, be honest.
Hmm.
Say, oh my gosh, it's February and I was supposed to, have it done in January, and, this is what I'm going to do to remedy it. And I'm already have these classes that I've taken, or, that kind of stuff. And when I make the employee folders for people, I also kind of give them this attestation form for them, so that they can keep track of all the classes that people have taken outside of the office, so that they can make sure that, everyone's had their however many hours of continuing ed they need for the year, to kind of double check.
So what's your process? I mean, I imagine pre-COVID you could actually go into the office and walk around and take a look, especially in New England. But if you're doing this nationally, do you actually have a staff member walk around with like an iPad, and you can FaceTime and see? They can point out certain areas of the office, and is that how you do your inspection?
Yeah, so I have my list. I mean, I have like this 20-page checklist that I go through. And I'll just, like, I've done it even, offices that are close to me now, in the beginning when, I wasn't going in anywhere. Um, yeah, they take their phone or their iPad, switch it on the other way so I can see where they're going, and they just walk me around their office and they show me stuff. And even the plans and protocols, like I can get a sense of your plans and protocols, without you, like, I don't need to flip through every page. I can see, I'll ask for the highlight reel, kind of. I'll ask
Hmm.
for specifically what I want to see. Um, but because what I ask is so specific, I think that, it's really easy to show me where those things are. The person doing it definitely gets a lot of exercise, because sometimes they'll ask for something that's over here and the next thing's over there and then it's over there. So sneakers, if we're doing that.
So in my office, we went through a lot of changes with COVID. We're digital, we're paperless. We've gone touchless with our front desk. We actually really don't even have a front desk anymore. There's no check in or check out. We hold credit cards on file. Um, no one really gathers anymore at the lunch table. People eat in the cars. The parking lot is the new waiting room. So there's been a lot of things that we've implemented. Is that part of your um, analysis or your plan for these offices and how they can be more COVID, I guess, COVID friendly, and be more touchless?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we do a lot of problem solving and brainstorming in all the offices that I go into. I tend to do a lot of dealing with the drama too. So there's always like someone that doesn't want to eat in their car or something, and we talk about why, and then they usually understand that they should eat in their car or whatever. But I definitely would do a lot of that. So not only do I do the physical stuff, but I do a lot of verbal consulting and coming in or doing a webinar and kind of explaining to people, giving them, I feel like people need the education and understanding why they're doing things, instead of just saying to them, okay, from now on, we're all walking around with plexiglass boxes around us and that's how we're doing it. I think if they understand what the rationale is behind who's ever making those decisions. And then I also too sometimes will go in and maybe someone's doing something and I see something that I think would be better or safer for them. I'm not shy about suggesting that.
I think that's so important to explain the why. This not even just with compliance, but in general. When I transitioned from associate to partner, I wanted to implement all these changes and just do it. And I didn't go into the why enough, or why are we doing this, and what's my reasoning, and what's my plan. So I think the more communication you have with your staff of why you're doing things and the reasoning behind it, and get them involved, creates better onboarding, just in general.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So do you think that offices, when we first got back after quarantine, we were open for emergencies, and I looked at patients like they were COVID dripping zombies. And, now I've gotten more relaxed. We're still careful with all the PPE, but are you finding that some offices may be slipping and getting a little more relaxed, or do you follow up with the offices to make sure they're still on board with everything?
Yeah, I do follow up with them. I mean, I agree. I do think that people are getting kind of laxed. I think that people everywhere, are getting kind of laxed of, the initial fear. Yeah, I try to follow up. I mean, I try to maintain relationships with people and, have them. A lot of times someone will call me, after I was there a couple months ago, and they'll call me and they'll say, this is happening, and, can you help me with this, or let's talk about this. So I do tend to get a relationship with the people in the office, and they do come back to me to kind of, see how we can problem solve some things like that may be
Mm-hmm.
slipping.
Do you think there's going to be another wave, another shutdown coming up?
I don't know. I can't predict, but I mean, I'm nervous about the schools opening. I think that there's going to be something going on with that, but I don't know. I mean, who knows? I can't imagine that you guys will all shut down again. That seems, you know, especially because now you have all the PPE. I think if you wear the
Mm-hmm.
PPE like you're supposed to, I think you're good. I think you're safe. I think that the dentist office, you guys are so used to cleaning, disinfecting anyway. I'd be feel much safer as a dental worker going into that environment than going into like the supermarket,
Right.
because I know that you guys know what you're doing. I think that where you come into problems are reusing things, rewearing things, taking masks off in a non-safe way, touching things, touching your hair or whatever, scratching your eye. I think a lot of the reusing of the PPE makes me a little nervous. That's why I want everyone always to have these huge PPE on off parties to make sure that they really understand how to take that stuff on and off so they can be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can do it in your sleep and you can be safe, I think you're golden. And I like the idea. I don't want people sitting in a lunchroom eating. I think that that's where you're going to get it. I think if you're wearing all your stuff, I think you're safe.
We we actually had our office meeting last week in the parking lot, sitting in lounge, in beach chairs, 6 feet apart, which was kind of fun. Um, but do you think that? Because I think you're right. I think that especially with schools, like I have a 5 and 7 year old. I think they're going to go back. They're going to be doing like a hybrid,
Yeah.
and then there's going to be one or two cases, and then they're just going to shut it down, and it's all going to go virtual. In the dental office, however, our patients feel safe. We've put them at ease with the HEPA filters, and we have the fogger, and everything's tarped up, and staggering the schedule. There's really not a waiting room anymore. So if there is another shutdown, I think we'll be okay. Maybe they go back a phase, where They say that we can no longer do elective cosmetic procedures and we go back to phase two. Um, but, like you said, all we know is right now. And I tell the staff we need to work as hard as we can right now because who knows what's going to happen in the future. Um, do you think that, and this seems like an off-topic question, but do you think the conventions and the trade shows are going to come back? Are they going to be hybrids or all virtual? What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just did the OSAP convention, and it was all online. It was great. I mean, it was a really,
Mm-hmm.
and they even commented that it was really cool because people could zoom in and ask their questions, and then the person could answer them, and it was so, it was a little bit more interactive than just a regular convention. I don't know. I mean, I hope they come back. I would imagine this year is going to be iffy for a lot of people, but hopefully
Yeah,
after that.
I've seen a lot of them that are just postponing and they're gonna reopen in 2021 for the conventions.
Yeah.
It's just so important to know the federal and local guidelines and to have all your plans and protocols in place and have everything written out. So I think that's where your office really, your company really comes in and can just kind of put your office at ease and relax that if you did get a drop-in inspection that you're going to be okay and that you're providing the safest environment for your patients and staff as well. Any last final nuggets of information or words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I mean, I go in to help you and make sure that if that someone ever came in, you would be as safe as you could be. But also, I mean, at heart, I'm a dentist. I care about you as people and I want you to be safe. Obviously, I want your patients to be safe, but I feel like the more knowledge that you have and the more organized stuff that you have in your office, stuff didn't sound very, professional, but the more organization you have, the safer you are, and the more you understand the disinfectants that you're using, how you need to protect yourself from them. What do you need to wear gloves? And, you know, utility gloves. Do you need glasses? Like, what do you need? I think those things are really important, and I want to make sure that offices are safe for themselves and for their patients that are coming in.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Kane.
Thanks for
And
having me.
again, you're welcome. Again, Dental Office Compliance in New England, doc4ne.com. Go to Deals for Dentists and sign up for your Zoom infection control and OSHA class and or a virtual complete office walkthrough, and mention Deals for Dentists and get a free COVID-19 binder, which is a $250 value.
Do you want to see the binder again?
It's a beautiful binder.
Well, it has all the information. People always ask me, what do I do if someone tests positive? What do I do if, a patient tests positive? What do I do if a staff member tests positive? And so it has it all in there, flow charts, broken down, everything. Um, you know, Answer all the questions that you would ask me about that are all in there.
Actually, I have one final question. So we heard a lot during the quarantine. I was getting a lot of updates from the Mass Dental Society, the ADA, the CDC, the World Health Organization, who didn't do us any favors by saying that dental care is not safe, which our office says the same thing the ADA says if a patient asks, which is rare actually. Not many patients have asked, but we say we respectfully disagree with their statement, and we feel that dentistry is very important and very safe. But we didn't hear much from the board. The Massachusetts board was very quiet almost until the very end. We got started to get some information from them. But throughout the quarantine, it was Mass Dental, ADA, CDC, but the board was almost absent. Did you find that as well?
Yeah, I mean, what I do all day when I'm, not all day, but I peruse all the sites, right? I'm always looking at the board site. I'm always looking at CDC, OSHA, ADA, everything, Mass Dental. Yeah, and it definitely, most of the stuff, I think Mass Dental kind of took over on that. I know the board, had meetings and did talk to each other, but I do think that, all the other groups, they were doing like such a comprehensive job. I don't think that there was anything really for the board to add. I mean, the board did talk about how they were extending licenses and that kind of stuff. I know as far as continuing ed, like the classes that I gave, as long as, because you have to have a certain amount of live classes and a certain amount of, you can't have too many, just like online classes. But if there's a real person there and you're able to interact and ask questions, I know that that was now considered a live class. So as far as, that's a difference, board wise, versus, because now you could possibly have all your classes on Zoom for this, license cycle.
Right.
So yeah, but I
Okay.
feel like all those everyone kind of went crazy with all their regulations.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Let's be
All
in
right, thank
touch.
you.
Maybe touch base in the next 6 months or so, and
Yeah,
see
I'd
what's
love to.
new. And hopefully things are back to more normal then. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
You too. See ya.